I started in the affiliate space in 2017. My first ever online business was actually in 2011, but I was also fresh in the corporate scene, and then my job became my life effectively for the next 6 years. And I was in living in New York at the time, and I started in the affiliate space because I was about to move back to Australia, and I just wasn't interested in continuing down that path. And so I started dabbling. I started building a little blog on planes and subways and in 2 hour Ubers from LaGuardia to Jersey City on a Friday night at stupid o'clock. Just trying to really bootstrap my way out of an industry that taught me a lot and served me well. Um, and I think in a lot of ways kind of set up what I've been able to do since, but is equally incredibly soul sucking. You are a number. The expectation is that you are on call permanently, and it is truly brutal. I've said this a few times, but I always find it funny in the like online entrepreneurship space. People talk about hustle and how hard they work. I can guarantee 99% of them would get their asses handed to them in the first week in the finance game. It is just out of control. And so it really cooked me out, and I got quite unwell. And so ultimately pulled the pin and went full time online on in late 2018. Then kind of went deep down the affiliate rabbit hole. Was able to win a bunch of awards. Did a big launch with Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Russell Brunson. Got to do a lot of travel. Got to speak on some stages, do some fun stuff. And then towards the end of 2019, teamed up with a couple of awesome gents. I think Chris is on the call. I don't know if Jamie's around, but and we pulled together an offer. This which was my kind of first like official offer, helping folks in that space. By this point, I'd kind of somewhat mastered the craft, and the demand was pretty significant, and I kind of pushed it off and pushed it off and pushed it off, and then we ultimately launched this thing and scaled it to $1 million in its first year. With hyper focus, and this is a relevant point for where we're going to go. Um, that showed me the power of if you put all your eggs into one thing that you're really proud of and is a killer product and a killer offer, and you show up each day with hyper clear messaging and just invite people to step forward consistently, you can make obscene amounts of money relatively quickly if you hit the right message, right market, all that kind of jazz. Okay, so that's really critical to where we're going to go today, because in a lot of ways I've kind of returned to those roots, so to speak. And that'll make more sense in a moment. That was my exclusive focus through 2020 and then into the first half of 2021. That offer kept running until about mid 2023. But as it happens in the online space, once you start to kind of carve out a bit of a name and people see you doing cool stuff, they're interested and they want to learn. And honestly, I'd been doing the affiliate stuff for quite a few years at that point, and was looking for something new and fresh. Um, the offer we scaled in 2020 we did with a combination of a call funnel, a sales page, some DMs. It was a bit of a mixture. But the majority of it at that time was done through a case study like Sam Ovens call funnel, and I was pretty fatigued from that. And so heading into kind of the middle of 2021, I launched my first offer helping people with their own programs, and shifted to selling exclusively without calls. I haven't done a sales call since then, since mid 2021, in any capacity, other than if it's like, there's a gent in LBA who reached out about a potential partnership opportunity, or really bespoke stuff where it just doesn't make sense to try and bounce back and forth in the DMs. But where you've got a structured, productized offer, with clear outcomes, clear focus, clear deliverables, clear timeline, clear pricing. Haven't done sales calls since the middle of 2021, which has been amazing. All right. So as I said here, launched my inner circle, and moved fully to focusing on this using a pure social selling approach, as I mentioned to Alex's question earlier on. And the structure was essentially content to DMs to offer. Okay. as I sit here and look back now, 2021 to 2024, I ran that model in a few different variations. I helped a lot of people. Um, Things worked really well for me personally. The majority of the business was organic. I dabbled in paid, paid a lot of money for some pretty shitty advice, honestly, at different times. Um, some good stuff as well. But I think a lot of the paid marketing advice gets aggressively overcomplicated. And so my hope is that I can, from what I've figured out, I can help you guys simplify it. Um, as I try and do with a lot of things. And through this season, when I reflect back now, I pretty much tried everything. So I did 50K high-end consulting packages, and I did $17 a month newsletters. And I did pretty much everything in between. Part of that was deliberate, and part of that was me jumping around a little bit. Right. Part of that was done because I wanted to build a really broad base and work out what do I like, what do I not like, what models work, what models are a real challenge, what are the pros and cons of all these different price points and structures and all this kind of stuff. Uh, and then part of it was me just getting shiny object syndrome like we all do, right? We're all human and it happens. Okay. But it gave me a really broad base of different things. So if there's something that you're wanting to try, there's a very real chance that I've done it at some point. Whether it was done well or not is a different story, but I've probably done it. All right. And then, and this again comes back to Alex's question, heading into this year, Liana was pregnant again. And I say that like it's the 11th Fast and the Furious movie again. Um, Liana's pregnant again. August was due in. Oh, this sentence is a shit show. Liana was pregnant again. August was due in March, um, and I enjoyed the business over the last few years, but I feel like I kept kind of hitting this invisible ceiling, um, and did a lot of deep reflection with myself. AI actually helped me a lot as a sounding board. Um, Spoke to a few different mentors, paid different people for different advice and perspective. But what was interesting is that I knew the answers deep down all along. And I think that's the case in a lot of situations. We can pay people for advice, but we can't ultimately defer the responsibility to have the tough internal conversations and make the decision and the commitment. Um, and so I spent a lot of time with a notepad just mapping things out, drawing things, just trying to get all of my thoughts out. And I'll tell you, I've told some of you this. The one of the big light bulbs that I had was contrary to kind of everything that I'd learned in business up until this point, right? So it didn't matter if it's, working with clients online or these, multi-billion dollar enterprises we dropped into who were in a really difficult situation when I was in New York. Conventional kind of advisory and turnaround work and consulting wisdom typically says find what's working and narrow in on that and kind of do more of it. And I'm not saying that's not sound advice, but I realized that I was in a bit of a season where I'd been doing what worked for a really long time and it had got me to a certain point, but there was another level I wanted to try and unlock, right? And another level is not just financial, it's also the type of work, people that you work with, how you spend your time, all that kind of stuff. To me, that's just as it's probably it's more important than the raw finances. Once you get out of kind of preliminary survival mode, anyway. Uh, and so I realized that doing more of what had worked was actually the problem. And so I had to have a really hard conversation with myself about committing to kind of tools down on stuff that had literally made me millions of dollars in order to try and build something more aligned to being a dad of two boys under two, and entering kind of a new season. All right. Because it's very, I mean, the people with kids know that it's very different when you got two kids versus when you in your mid 20s and you can sit on your balcony DMing people all day. It's very it's a very different structure in your day, right? Um, and so I needed to realign the business to that, right? And I'm a big like models person. Like I need to see stuff. And so I started drawing things out and really, trying to piece it all together. And then what I ultimately landed on was this structure here. Um, and some of this will be relevant for some of you. All of it will be relevant for some of you. One piece of it may be relevant for some of you. I want to show you all this to drill in so that you've got full context around where everything comes from. Okay. And I know I've covered this with some of you, so I apologize for the repetition. But this is what I effectively landed on. For those of you that know me well, you'll know that my kind of big North Star is ultimately ending up on the board of the football team that I'm like a fifth, sixth generation supporter of. And that's one of those things that when you tell people, sometimes it's kind of like the Gary V, Jets thing. I had this idea long before I heard of Gary V. I'll put that on the table, but we can't buy football clubs in Australia. They're part of a membership, so it's the next best thing. Uh, and you tell people that sometimes, and they think it's funny if they don't kind of get sport, and how significant a sporting organization can be, particularly to a family. But to me, it's effectively my religion, and I don't say that to demean anybody's religion, but that's just kind of what it is. Uh, and so that's my big North Star, and reconnecting with that, I realized that if I want to be able to do that, I'm going to need influence and money. Unfortunately, I'm going to need more, right? And the current vehicle that I was running had served me really well, but in order to push up to another bracket, like go from millionaire to kind of deca millionaire, I think something has to change, right? And so I mapped this out, and this is kind of the model that I'm overall really building towards now. Gives me more clarity, gives me more structure. And you guys are welcome to, go and take any of this. I have a lot of fun kind of just sharing my light bulbs and breakthroughs with you guys. You don't have to take it verbatim. But hopefully there's something in there that, you know, lights some sparks. And so essentially what I did is I carved out the info part of the business into a separate container, separate accounts, separate merchant, separate bank accounts, all that kind of stuff, so that I could really sit back as more like an engineer or an architect of it, as opposed to being in it day to day. With everything being built around kind of ads and content, email, YouTube, remarketing, low ticket offers, and then ultimately ending up where we are here. The common thread being all of this stuff is leveraged and one to many for me, right? It's all leveraged. It's not me on the phone with someone one to one. It's not me DMing people one to one, and it's not me delivering one to one. It's a leveraged kind of intellectual property business, right? And then this container being basically the inverse of that. One-to-one work, helping people install kind of different models and systems, revenue share work, equity work, and then smaller, more bespoke events, masterminds that I've kind of done at different times along the journey. Now, to the external eye, that may fundamentally not mean too much, but when you start breaking things out like this, it can give you a lot of clarity. And when I went through this season, where the main offer was my inner circle, the challenge that I ran into, it still worked really well, but the challenge that I ran into was that, which it wasn't always pure one to one, but it was very high touch. And the challenge that I ran into was that I didn't have this machine running 24/7 to replenish the audience, break even or at a profit, nurture at scale. And so it was more of this kind of jumping back and forth between delivery and then growth, nurture, sell, deliver. And it was jumping back and forth a little bit too much. And for anyone that's done kind of one-to-one work, you've probably experienced that. And so with this, what it now allows is that this runs 24/7, and it grows the brand, and it grows the audience, and it converts people into customers, and it converts people into clients, and it nurtures at scale around kind of my core thinking and methodologies. And what it does naturally is it feeds this with opportunity, right? Which is the goal. Now, our work here, I want to focus on building this piece of it with you guys. But that's a kind of another level that this can go to, is when you really set up a machine that kind of runs. Um, People will come to you wanting to work with you one to one. People will come to you wanting to have your help in terms of doing done for you stuff, revenue share work. Um, Chris Donnelly and I are partnering up on a couple of things at the moment with different clients. Uh, Equity is kind of another level in terms of involvement. You've got an audience where you can run events, you can run masterminds, you can do in person stuff. So this provides a really leveraged baseline that then allows this stuff to happen a lot more organically and naturally. And that's the vision, right? And so this part may be relevant to some of you, it may not be, but it's worth noting. All right. It's like a byproduct of having this set up. And then the third piece, which I think is really important for everybody, is if you want to longer term have, more and more optionality, you've got to make sure that the money that you're making is going to work for you. And your money's making you money is making you money, essentially. Otherwise you're constantly in this active income cycle. And so this is the third piece of it all. I've got to trust what that I invest through, and we've got different bits and pieces that are assets in there currently across real estate, equities from like just a stock perspective, debt instruments provide income, alternate investments, cryptos, and then the one part that will come online more and more over the next couple of years is more active equity, so offline businesses, and that essentially takes the internet money and makes it real and turns $1 into $2 into $4 into $8 over time. All right. And at the core of it all, for me anyway, is the personal brand, right? It's doing calls like this where I share with you guys my insights and my things that I realize. It's ultimately going to be, the next piece of real estate I want to buy is going to be down in Tasmania, in kind of really nice wine country in Australia, and I want to bring in videographers and document that whole process, and really position the personal brand as documenting this whole group, right? Whereas before it was very in the weeds, kind of down here, like in the business. Now it's really zooming out and building things from kind of a higher level. All right. So this was the first thing that I got a lot of clarity on that really, really helped. Okay. And as I'm going through this stuff, don't just think about like, that's relevant for Jacob, or that's nice for Jacob, he's been doing this for a really long time, or think about what's your version of this, right? And it may not have anything to do with these three buckets, but what's your North Star? Like what's your thing that you can put on the wall, and every day when you walk in, you realize, hey, I'm not just sending an email, I'm laying another brick for that. It's really, really important. Because one thing people ask all the time is like, dude, how are you so consistent? Like I rarely miss in terms of creating in some form. And it's because I'm not just sent in my head anyway, and this may be slightly narcissistic or whatever. But when I send an email, I'm not sending an email. I'm laying another piece down here, or down here rather. And it's another spin of this model. And when this bad boy spins, this bad boy spins. Right. And so it completely changes several things. I mean, this is what we're going to talk about in the mindset section, but it changes your entire perspective that you operate from. Where I'm competing against people who are just sending another email, to me, I'm like, no, 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 this is bigger. And that's how I'm still excited about this. And honestly, I'm more excited than ever. You guys can probably hear it in my voice. Hopefully, when I talk about this, I'm more excited than ever. And I'm 8 years into this game. In 8 years, this space will wipe out 99% of people. It's because it's not what it appears on the surface. And I don't know if you operate the same way as me, but for me, I need this stuff because it lights me up, right? And this isn't about, some vanity brand and stacking, cash and investment. This is the model that allows me to knock off at 3 o'clock and be with the boys all afternoon. That's what it's really about, right? This is the model that's going to give, us the life that we want. This is the model that's going to allow me to work on cool projects with cool people, to donate to charity. It's all that stuff that it really fuels. And so what I would encourage you to do is think about, what does yours look like? And I don't know if you're a visual person, maybe you need to record a voice note to yourself, film a video talking to yourself, like whatever works for you. But I would recommend that you have something as a big North Star. I've always done this. And for me, it takes goal setting to a whole new level. But what it does is, especially when you've run this play a few times and you pick a target and hit it and pick a target and hit it and pick a target and hit it, it and your self trust gets to a requisite level. Um, it changes making the decision about doing something to a matter of when and not if. Right? People say, and I noticed this on your onboarding forms. People say, I hope. Had a very, very wise man that I worked for in New York. He restructured some of the biggest companies in the world, and he was the most chill dude ever. And whenever I'd say hope, it's from South Dakota, so he had an accent that I'm not even going to attempt to. But he lived in New York for a long time, so imagine this like Motley Crue South Dakota New York accent, which I'm not even going to attempt. And he used to say, Jacob, hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. And I see that word hope on the onboarding forms, and I always smile because I think of Kevin. Um, but this clarity in the North Star for me flips it from a matter of if to when, right? So find your North Star. Okay. Be it a model. For me, when I was in the affiliate space, it was an award. It was individual awards. I was like, well, I'm just not going to stop until I win that thing. And then I did it again and again and again and again. And there's two phases to it. We're going to talk about this in the mindset section. There's deciding and then there's holding, which we're going to talk about. Okay. So that's the 30,000 foot. And then we drill in from there. Okay. Uh, what I'm really aiming to do here with you guys, and we're really focused on this piece here, the intellectual property, the info business side of it. What I've aimed to provide you, and what we're going to cover, is essentially the intersection of everything that I've learned in this game up until this point, eliminating the mistakes, integrating the lessons, and then giving you what I'm really doing now. It's like an intersection of all of those things, because there's going to be elements that different people need to apply based on where they're at. And this is why we do the onboarding process. So I can tailor it to your situation. Okay. Um, it's designed to be the leanest, most streamlined version for the reasons that I articulated here, so that it can run on its own within the broader group. Okay. And then, some of the biggest shifts, moving away from pure social selling and organic, it's still part of it. It's just not all of it. Okay. The core engine being built around paid and email, with organic as a supporting layer, and then returning to the roots in terms of one core offer. And this is why I alluded to this when I was talking about the first affiliate offer. Is I tried lots of different things, and then just coming back to the fundamentals of build an ecosystem where all the roads point to one place. And I'll tell you what happens when you do this and when you really commit to it. And I kind of sit here and want to do a bit of a Dobby and kind of iron my hands a little bit, because I strayed from that for several years. That's a niche reference that some people may not pick up. Um, when you commit to one thing, and instead of giving your audience the decision about, okay, do I want to work with this person? Yes, no. And then in what capacity do I want to work with this person? And then there's like six different things. It's just one decision. It's like, am I going to step into this container or am I not? And what happens over time is if you imagine this is your offer, and this might be the however many clients you've got now, if for every week, every month, every quarter that you show up building pressure and attention towards that, it's like waves, right? And it just builds. It's like a damn wall. And then eventually it just busts, right? And so that's pretty ingrained in this. Okay. So that's kind of the fundamentals that really got us to this point.